I've completed continuing education training in gaming disorder as well as digital health and wellness. And in this video, I'm going to talk about kids with ADHD and video game addiction and what you can do to help your child who most likely does not have a video game addiction, even though you strongly believe they do. Hi, I'm Ryan. I'm a licensed clinical social worker who specializes in child and adolescent ADHD, a former school social worker, and father to a son with ADHD. I want to start off by explaining that I believe the word addiction is thrown around way too liberally in our culture right now. Often, anything that makes parents uncomfortable, they refer to their child as an addict. So they play video games too much or they get emotionally dysregulated around video games while they're a video game addict. What I want to explain is because your child gets emotionally dysregulated around video games or has difficulty getting off, that does not mean that they have a video game addiction. That being said, the research data shows that people with ADHD are more prone to addictions in general, so it makes perfect sense why somebody with ADHD would meet the criteria for gaming disorder, although it's not a recognized medical diagnosis in the United States yet. Here are my tips if your child struggles with video gaming. Number one, are there daily expectations in place for them to earn their gaming time, or are video games an entitlement in your home? Very often in families of kids with ADHD, I see what I refer to as high giving, low expectations, meaning kids are given everything, video game systems, phones, and so on, and nothing is asked of them in return in regards to respectful behavior or helping around the house. And typically what this creates is a tremendous sense of entitlement in kids, as well as an unwillingness to help around the house or think about the needs of family members. So if you currently don't have expectations in place in your home for your child to earn video game time, that's something that needs to change regardless of how old they are. I have a course called Creating Daily Expectations, which is part of the ADHD Dude membership site. And that course will help you understand how to create daily expectations in your home for your child to earn gaming time. And remember, expectations have to be both behavioral, so in terms of how we treat the family, as well as helping around the house. Next thing, I always recommend to families that you should be familiar with the games your child is playing, because too often I see kids playing violent video games or games with really mature themes that are not age appropriate. If the game has anything morally questionable in it, well, maybe it's not age appropriate for your child then. That's a decision you have to make based on your values. Next is to help your child visually see the transition from gaming time to whatever comes after that. One of the most common complaints I hear from parents is their child's difficulty getting off of video games. I teach a strategy to deal with this in Executive Function Crash Course, which is part of the ADHD membership site. And what I teach is how to make a transition visual by teaching your child how to see time and visually see that transition coming up. I will tell you, out of all the strategies I teach, this is one that parents often report to me makes the biggest difference. Sometimes parents will say, well, my son isn't willing to use that clock strategy that you taught in Executive Function Crash Course. And my answer to that is, well, then I guess he's not ready to play video games then. You as the parent may need to step into your parental authority and tell your child, this is what's required if you want to play the video games that I provide for you, and for you to use the internet, which I also provide for you. Again, it's really easy for any child to think things like video games or the internet are entitlements that they're owed, but for kids with ADHD who may struggle with perspective taking, so thinking about others' thoughts and feelings, they can really develop a sense of entitlement around this. Next is to have clear time frames for gaming that are earned when your child meets the daily expectations I just spoke about before. If you don't have clear parameters around gaming time, then your child is most likely going to take advantage of that, and they're often going to say, well, I just got on, or my friends aren't on, or if I shut the game off now, well, then I'm going to lose everything. Kids will make up any excuse to stay on video games. Many of you know that already. So when we have clear parameters around how much time they have for gaming, that's really helpful, particularly for kids with ADHD. I also want to mention to you that the American Academy of Pediatrics recommended screen time for kids is 1 hour on weeknights and no more than 2 hours on weekends. Now, many parents obviously go over that, and to be honest with you, I don't think that's a problem if you go over that. But again, if your child gets emotionally dysregulated when they're gaming too much, well, it might be a good idea to stick to those time parameters recommended by the AAP. Last thing I want to mention is that for many kids, including teenagers, playing violent video games absolutely affects their mood. My son's psychiatrist once told me that she was able to not raise kids' medication simply by getting them off of violent video games. I will tell you, for my own son, the more he played violent video games, the more irritable he would become and the more selfish he would become. And eventually I just had to put a stop to that. And this is actually when he was in high school. I'm not suggesting you do that, but just keep that in mind if you find that playing certain video games tends to really affect your child's mood or behavior. Parents will sometimes ask me, well, what about just completely removing video games? My feeling is if you want to do that, that is your choice, but I don't think that's a good idea. And let me explain why. Gaming is part of kids' culture today, particularly for boys. So if they are completely removed from that, well, that can be a little difficult to connect with other kids socially if other kids are into gaming and they can't talk about the things that other kids are talking about. And if you're thinking, well, they can just talk about something else, it's not that easy. Boys talk about video games a lot. The other part of this is kids do need to learn how to have self control around gaming. So if we remove it completely, well, that solves the problem because it's just not there anymore. But then what happens when they go away to college? I will tell you, most of the 18 and 19-year-olds I've seen who went away to college and were home by the end of their first semester or even before the end of their first semester, it wasn't academics, it wasn't organization, it wasn't mental health. It was because they couldn't control their screen time. So they would stay up late all night gaming, and then they would miss class in the morning, and then things would snowball from there. I believe it's really important that we teach kids how to manage their gaming time. And the way we do that is by putting the scaffolding in place that I mentioned in this video to put parameters around gaming time and expectations as well. If you're looking for parent training, which is the evidence-based recommended treatment for kids with ADHD, please check out the ADHD Dude membership site where you can find my Scaffolding Better Behavior program, as well as Creating Daily Expectations, which I mentioned earlier, as well as some other courses. I hope this is helpful. I will speak to you soon. Take care.